Picture this. It's 1:30 a.m. on Christmas morning, 1945. A mother jolts awake to the acrid smell of smoke filling her lungs. Within minutes, her house is an inferno. She escapes with her husband and four children, but five of her children are trapped upstairs. By dawn, those children have vanished without a trace. Not dead, vanished. Welcome back to the Common Historian podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy, and what you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about official investigations, small town cover ups, and how far parents will go to find the truth. This is a story of five children who disappeared on Christmas Eve and the 44-year obsession that followed. Let me tell you about George Sodder, 13 year 13 years old when he stepped off the boat from Italy in 1908. By 1945, he owned a trucking company, a coal business, and a two-story house on a hillside in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The American dream, right? Wrong. See, George had a problem. He couldn't keep his mouth shut. While neighbors stayed quiet about politics, George Sodder stood on street corners and in local diners, railing against Mussolini's fascist regime. He called Mussolini a dictator, a murderer, a disgrace to Italy. In 1945, with World War II barely over, and anti-Italian sentiment still simmering, these weren't just opinions. They were dangerous opinions. George and his wife, Jenny, had 10 children. Let me paint you with this picture. Marion, 17, the responsible eldest daughter. John, 23, already helping with the family business. George Jr., 16, learning to be a man in his father's shadow. Then the middle children, who would be the heart of our mystery. Maurice, 14, the quiet one. Martha, 12, always helping her mother. Lois, 9, with those distinct ears the family would later recognize in a photo. Jenny, 8, named for her mother, and Betty, 5, the baby girl who still believed in magic. The youngest, Sylvia, was only 2. They seemed untouchable, successful, safe. They had no idea what was coming. Fall 1945, a life insurance salesman knocked on the Sodders' door. George politely declined the policy. The salesman's response, let me quote this exactly. I quote, "Your house is going up in smoke, and your children are going to be destroyed." Unquote. He pointed to their fuse box and added, "This is going to cause a fire someday." Now, you might think that's just a pushy salesman having a bad day. But remember, because in 3 months, it will sound like a prophecy. The same fall, George walks out of his truck one morning. The brake lines had been cut, sugar in the gas tanks. Someone is trying to kill him, or at least send a message. Then the phone calls start. Jenny answers the strange voices asking for people who don't live there. But they don't hang up. Instead, she hears them talking in the background, mentioning her children's names. Her children's names. The sound of party music, clinking glasses, like they're celebrating something. 3 days before Christmas, it happens again. This time, Jenny recognizes something in the caller's voice. Mockery, like they knew something she doesn't. The Sodder starts sleeping lighter, checking locks twice. George keeps a closer eye on his trucks, but they're watching the wrong things. Jenny Sodder wakes up choking. Smoke, thick black smoke, pouring up from the downstairs. She shakes George awake, and in seconds, they understand their house is on fire. But here's what's strange about this fire. It starts in the middle of the night when was asleep, in multiple places at once, not like an electrical fire that starts small and spreads, like someone wanted it to burn fast. George and Jenny grab the children they can reach. Four make it out. Sylvia the baby and three others were sleeping downstairs. The older kids, Marion and John, were still out at a Christmas party. But upstairs, five children are trapped. Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5. George starts for the stairs, walls of flames, impassable. He runs outside for his ladder, the one he always keeps against the house, for maintenance. It's gone. His truck, both trucks that worked perfectly yesterday, turn the key, nothing. Not a sputter, not even a click. Think about this for a moment. Your house is burning. Your children are screaming upstairs, and every single thing you need to save them has been sabotaged. George sends John to call the fire department. The neighbor's phone, dead line. It's now 2 a.m., Christmas morning. Five children are trapped in an inferno, and somehow no one can call for help. Want to know when the fire department finally arrived? 8 a.m., 7 hours after the fire started. Their excuse? The chief was drunk at a Christmas party and couldn't be roused. In a town of 2,000 people with five children trapped in a burning house, the fire chief was too drunk to respond. When they finally showed up, they can't get water. The lines are frozen, they say. The nearest hydrant is too far away. By then, of course, the has burned to the foundation. Nothing left but ashes and twisted metal. Here's what should have happened next. The fire department searches the debris, finds the remains of the five children, holds a funeral, case closed. Here's what actually happened. They find nothing. Not a bone, not a tooth, not a belt buckle or a shoe sole. Nothing. The fire chief, the same one who was too drunk to respond, announces that the fire burnt so hot it completely incinerated five human bodies, leaving no trace. George Sodder, who works with machinery and knows about fires, knows this is impossible. House fires don't burn hot enough to completely destroy human remains. Even in crematoriums with temperatures over 2,000 degrees, bone fragments survive. But here's the real sick part. The coroner signs death certificates for all five children without even visiting the scene, without examining a single piece of evidence. The case is closed before it's even investigated. George Sodder wasn't the kind of man who accepted official answers when they didn't make sense. So he hired a private investigator and started digging. What he found will make your blood run cold. First discovery. Those phone lines were burned in the fire. They were cut. They weren't burned. The phone company confirmed it. Someone had severed the lines before the fire started. Second, that missing ladder, found in a creek, thrown there hours before the fire began. Third, his trucks didn't malfunction. They were sabotaged. Cut ignition wires, tampered electrical systems. Someone made sure George couldn't drive them close to the house to reach the second story windows. But here's the smoking gun, literally. Remember those bone fragments the authorities claimed were the children's remains? George had them tested by a forensic expert. Beef liver. Someone had planted pieces of beef liver in the debris to make it look like human remains. Now the witnesses started coming forward. A bus driver saw children matching the Sodder's description in a car driving away from the area around the time of the fire. A woman at a restaurant 50 miles away saw five children with several adults the morning after the fire. Children who looked scared and wouldn't make eye contact. The waitress remembered them because one of the little girls kept asking for her mama. George and Jenny Sodder did something that had never been done before. They erected a billboard along Route 16 with photographs of all five missing children. The message was simple: $5,000 reward for information leading to the whereabouts of these five missing children. That billboard stood for decades. Thousands of travelers saw those five faces staring down at them, a constant reminder that somewhere these children might still be alive. And the tips started pouring in. A Florida woman claimed she'd seen the children in a residential facility, being cared for, but looking sad and scared. When the Sodders rushed to Florida, they found the facility. The children were gone, but neighbors confirmed kids matching those descriptions had been there. A private detective claimed he had traced them to New York and said he could bring them home for a large fee. The Sodders paid him their life savings. He disappeared with their money. But then came the tip that changed everything. 1968, 23 years after the fire, Jenny Sodder received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a photo of a young man with dark hair and distinctive features. On the back, someone had written, Louis Sodder. I love brother Frankie. Little boys, A90132 or 35. Jenny stares at the photo. Those eyes, the jawline, the same features she remembered from her 9-year-old son, now grown into a man. Louis would have been 32 years old in 1968. The Sodders hired another detective to decode the cryptic message, Brother Frankie. None of their children was named Frank, but if Louis had been given a new identity, he might have been told he had different siblings. The numbers could be a prison ID, a case number, some kind of institutional code. They never found him, but the photograph gave them something they had been surviving on for 23 years: hope. So, what really happened to the Sodder children? Theory one: George's vocal opposition to Mussolini made him a target of the Italian organization, organized crime figures with fascist sympathies. The kidnapping was revenge, a message to other Italian immigrants to keep their mouth shut about politics. Theory two: local corruption. Maybe the children were kidnapped by a child trafficking ring, or local authorities were paid to cover it up. This would explain the botched investigation, the planted evidence, and the refusal to properly examine the case. Theory three: the cruelest possibility. The children were sold to childless couples who wanted to adopt illegally. Somewhere in America, 5 adults might be living normal lives, never knowing their real names, or their parents spent decades searching for them. Here's what we know for certain: those children did not die in that fire. The evidence is overwhelming. They were taken, and someone went to extraordinary lengths to make it look like they died. The question isn't whether they were kidnapped. The question is who had the power to orchestrate such an elaborate cover up. George Sodder died in 1969, having spent 24 years of his life searching for his children. His last words to his family were about the case. He made them promise to never stop looking. Jenny continued the search for another 20 years until her death in 1989. She kept every letter, every tip, every photograph that might be connected to her missing children. Her house became a shrine to their memory and a command center for the investigation. Think about it: a mother who spent 44 years of her life believing her children were out there somewhere, maybe wondering why she had never came to find them. The surviving Sodder children have continued to search. They've hired investigators, followed leads, submitted the case to television shows, anything to keep the story alive. Because here's the thing about unsolved mysteries: they don't stay unsolved. They don't stay unsolved because there's no evidence. They stay unsolved because someone doesn't want them solved. Modern forensic experts who examined this case are unanimous. Those children did not die in that fire. The burn patterns, the temperature analysis, the complete absence of human remains, it all points to one conclusion: this was a kidnapping disguised as a tragedy. But here's what really haunts me about the case. In 1945, if you had the right connections, if you knew the right people, if you had enough money, you could make 5 children disappear and make it look like an accident. You could intimidate witnesses, pay off officials, control the narrative. The Sodder case isn't just about 5 missing children. It's about how power works in small towns. It's about what happens when ordinary people challenge the official story. It's about the price of speaking truth to power. George Sodder spoke out against fascism, and his children disappeared. Coincidence? The billboard came down in the 1980s. But if you drive Route 16 through Fayetteville, West Virginia, locals can still point to where it stood. Some say on foggy nights, you can still see the shadow of those five faces looking down at the road. Maurice Sodder would be 91 years old if he was alive. Martha would be 89. Lewis would be 87. Jenny would be 86. And Betty would be 83. Somewhere out there, five people might be living their lives, never knowing their real family spent decades searching for them, never knowing their disappearance sparked one of America's most compelling unsolved mysteries. Or maybe they do. Maybe they've always known. Maybe they've been waiting their whole lives for someone to come looking for them. The truth is out there in a filing cabinet in some FBI office, in the memory of someone who kept a secret for 80 years, in a family Bible where five names were changed long ago. George and Jenny Sodder never gave up hope that they would see their children again. They went to their graves believing that somewhere Maurice, Martha, Lewis, Jenny, and Betty were still alive. Maybe they were right. Maybe they still are. The Sodder children case remains officially unsolved. If you have any information about this case, please contact the FBI or local authorities in West Virginia. Remember, some mysteries aren't meant to be forgotten. They're meant to be solved. Join us next time on The Common Historian, where we dig into stories history tried to bury. Until then, keep questioning the official story, because sometimes the truth is hiding in plain sight.